for me, it was a breathtaking moment to hear the pitch for the first time, because I had been looking for something like this as an investor for over a decade, actually. So I've trained as a geneticist. DNA will always be my first love. But recognizing that proteins are so critical, kind of the business end of biology, what's happening in our bodies and disease. And so if we're going to really understand some of those disease processes you were talking about and be able to catch them and diagnose them, then we have to look to the proteins, right?
That's right.
They're doing the job. And so had been looking for those kinds of tools, but recognized some of the limitations that you were describing. How do we generate the data? Right, was a problem because they are so complex. You can't just sequence them. And then once we generated the data, how do you make sense of it?
Right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I had seen many pitches.
We talked, and I went and visited you in San Francisco, and you talked about your other investments, and I was really blown away by how innovative you were thinking, both about the tech life sciences interface, but also about the potential of both diagnostics and synthetic biology, which was unusual at that time. Right. And I think the rest of the investment community is a little bit catching up now. Yeah. But at that time, Genoa was really out there with a vision. And now in retrospect, I imagine how that was quite risky, I think, for you guys to position yourself in that very unoccupied space at that time.
As you've heard, we're very motivated by the special magic, I think, that comes from interdisciplinary interactions. And in particular, this idea that we're seeing the tectonic forces of advances in biology, genomics, proteomics, advances in tech, data sciences, but not just the information, but also the materials, the automation, bringing that all together. Right. And what drops out is innovations that don't belong to one category or another, which makes them incredibly exciting and potentially impactful, and also very lonely for people because they go knock on a life sciences investor's door and they say, I get part of your story, but why aren't you making it therapeutic?
Right.
And then they go and knock on the tech community, to your point, has really, I think, woken up to the transformation that's happening in biology and how much that is data dependent. But they quite rightly very often don't want to take the fundamental science risk, the biology. It's maybe not in their wheelhouse. And so I saw that again and again. I moved to the Bay Area 10 years ago in 2013 to find these companies because, like you said, this is the best of both worlds. You can sit down at a cafe table and talk to someone in life sciences and someone in data sciences. It's just this incredible melting pot. But notice that there wasn't an investor kind of standing there in the middle and said, we will be both.
That's right. Yeah. There wasn't. Yeah. And I would even go further to say that if you put the traditional tech investors together with the traditional life sciences investors, there's a lot of friction between those communities. The timelines are different. Yeah. The amount of money it takes to make a product is different. The risk profile is much different.
That's right.
And then there are stories that taint the ecosystem, stories like Theranos, for example, where, tech investors not knowing what they're getting into, trying to jump into life sciences can end in disaster, right?
And we'd like to avoid that.
We want to avoid that at all costs. Exactly. Yeah. So what you need to have are people with deep subject matter expertise and a very healthy respect for the differences between those disciplines so that you can minimize the friction. And again, you were way out in front of the trends at that time. They're really, I didn't hear at least other investors talking like this. Now that's changed, and I think you have people who see the success of Genoa and feel like, okay, I see that there's an opportunity there, and they want to.
Which is great. We welcome it. No company gets built, with one investor, right? It really does require a capital formation journey from the beginning that chips away at the risk, that shows the milestones, that brings in stage-appropriate investors who understand the company at each point and helps them get to the next level. Yeah. So we take that role very seriously. We know we're not late-stage investors, but what we can do is be that partner at the very beginning that says, we get where you're coming from at the science. We understand the fundamentals. Let's chart a course to the kind of success and impact you want to have. And get there every step of the way. And how can we support you on that journey?